Welcome to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, the podcast by filmmakers for filmmakers.
This episode is sponsored by Gemini Crown Tech, software for all of your production needs. Stay tuned for more information later in the show. Hello, everybody. This is the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, and today we are talking desert dreams, unicorns, and the Cactus King as we discuss the new feature animation from Nick Johnson, the Sunburnt Unicorn. Nick, I loved your movie, as I was just telling you. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me, how did this idea originate? Because it's wildly mythic, and I love mythology, and I love animation. So where did this story come from?
It started with a drawing, and the first drawing that I was able to track down was from my last year in art university, which was back in 2013. And it's just a drawing of a dude with a piece of glass stuck in his head, and it's kind of gritty and grisly and weird. And I was like, this is strange. The image stuck with me and what really kind of stuck with me was the idea of like a character who did not remove this piece of glass, but instead walked around with it stuck in their head. And that was kind of the distinctive little piece of that design that would kind of open the story.
Yeah.
And of course, at the time, I had no idea what the hell I was going to do with this drawing or what it would be. But fortunately, you have some time to think about an idea and it percolates and ruminate on it. And I really got kind of drawn into this idea of using a fairy tale or, like you said, a mythic kind of approach to a story. And one that could be a beautiful metaphor for like a child getting to know their parent. I really wanted to do a story about specifically about a kid who was going through these trials and tribulations and encountering these creatures that were kind of off-putting, kind of charming, and each one would represent a facet of his father's personality, so that by the end of this story, this kid would have a better understanding of who their parent was, and a better understanding of who they were as an adult, not just like the parent-child dynamic, but like, could I be a friend of this person? I was really drawn in by that, and the idea of creating creatures that were manifestations of a person's personality just like seems so tempting as a creator, as an artist and a writer. But I did kind of hit this wall because I was, not to go too far back, but I was raised in a very religious family. And at this point, my father kind of were estranged. And my father won't really talk to me because we don't believe the same thing.
I'm sorry, not to interrupt. Are you talking about when you were a child or when you were making the film, or when did this happen?
Oh, yeah. So I was raised in this religion when I was a child. And when I was 19, I left it. And
Gotcha.
my father is still a part of it, and got to a point where he said he wouldn't associate with me anymore unless I came back.
Right.
And so I realized I couldn't really make a movie from a sincere place about like getting to know who your father is without somehow this kind of thing working out. So what I kind of did is shift gears, and I started to ask myself, like, what if all of these creatures that our main character encounters were reflections of himself, reflections of a sad lie that he believed. And this sad lie is the theme of Sunburnt Unicorn, and it is the theme of Sunburnt Unicorn is you do not have to be special to be worthy of love.
It's a good theme.
But most of us, thank you. Yeah, it is a good theme, and it's kind of a mantra I have to recite to myself over and over, which is partly what makes the movie so personal to me. But Frankie, the main character, does not believe this. He thinks he does have to be special. He thinks he has to be a unicorn. And so every creature, every person he encounters in this mythic journey through this surreal desert is this twisted version of a person who thinks they need to be special, so special that it kind of drives them mad, and it gets them to do these really dark kind of things, which you saw in the movie.
And what's your background? How did you get involved in film and storytelling and animation?
My background is in comic books, and I wanted to be a comic book artist since I was a kid, and even through art school and after that. And then I would try to get jobs at animation studios as a storyboard artist because storyboarding and comics are just so closely linked. It's pure visual storytelling.
Right.
But I didn't get that job, one I had auditioned for when I was younger. But it put me on the map of this director. And he just watched me over a period of a decade get better and better. He watched as my art grew as I went to art school. And after 10 years, they needed an art director for their animated film, a 3D animated film. And they called me up and said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, I'm a comic book artist. I don't know if I'm prepared for this. I don't know if I have the training for it. But naturally, when you get an opportunity like that, you take it. And so I did. And, 6 or 7 years later, this relationship was built that put me up into a place where I could write and direct my own thing, which was surreal on its own.
And how difficult is it to get an animated film off the ground? I mean, that's a big undertaking, I would think. But maybe for you it was very easy. I don't know.
I'm very fortunate in the fact that my producers and my executive producer have been doing this for a long time. So making art in Alberta specifically can be kind of hard. We have tax credits which are really competitive, which is nice. We have good granting systems, but also there are certain challenges to it. However, because we're based in two different provinces, we can take advantage of two different tax credit systems. And if I didn't have the guidance of my producers, Pat and Colin, there's no way I could have got this off the ground. So having their support, knowing they'd made films, and us making films together, like I started as an art director and a storyboard artist, and then became a co-director and a writer, and slowly but surely showed that I had storytelling chops and also that I could lead a team. And I think after 6 or 7 years, it came to the point where they knew they could trust me with a bigger project.
So walk us through the process when you have an idea for an animation and you pitch it to your producers. What's the process of taking this idea in your head into the finished product? Obviously, there are a lot of stages, but I'm curious about specifically creating the characters, creating the look of the animation. Does the story change as you start working on your animatics or your storyboards and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, you always want it to be exactly the way you picture it in your head, but naturally, the moment other people start getting involved in budgets and schedules, it's a world of compromise, right?
Sure.
Um, which is why the idea of a theme is so important to me because, characters can change a bit, locations can change a bit. It never gets the scale you kind of want, but when you come back down to it, you're like, is this movie still about the same thing? And if that can remain intact, if everybody who comes in brings their expertise that just makes that stronger and helps to resonate through every layer of design and animation and production, just makes that movie more cohesive as a whole and potentially more resonant with your audiences.
Unpack that a little bit for me. When you say making
Yeah.
sure you stay true to the theme, obviously you're not just talking about story, I'm assuming. You're talking about the color palette, the look of the characters, the design. I mean, because all of that has to support the story. It has to support the theme. So how do
Mhm.
you work through that process of creating the look to support specifically, as you were talking about, the theme and the story? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it is a complicated question. But what I do find is that there are millions and millions of decisions to be made every single day, millions every day. Throughout the process, there's probably a million. And that's overwhelming and it's kind of terrifying. And
Sure.
so anytime I was in doubt, I would always just come back to that question. So let's say we're trying to design one of our main characters, right? Like let's take Cordelia. She's a 1920s explorer. And what's the theme of the movie? It's you do not have to be special to be worthy of love. But this character is a demented version of someone who doesn't believe that. And so what it tells us to do is it tells us to create a character who is good intentioned, someone cheery, someone happy. Cordelia has this clownish Harlequin kind of vibe, which can be very charming and whimsical. But because she's kind of isolated herself and she has put herself in this box in this really dark position, she's also going to be very off-putting and very strange. And her earnestness is going to be very kind of uncanny, you know? And so what that tells us to do in our design is we start from that friendly Harlequin place, but we start to make little choices like, so Cordelia's pupils, if you ever noticed in the movie, are always slightly pointing in the wrong direction. They're always kind of twitchy. Um, she kind of looks like a skeleton in people's clothes, and her movements are very unnatural, and her shape language is very bony and very quirky. So we've got those two kind of elements working in her design that make us feel charmed and swept away, but also tell us that something is wrong with this person. And that kind of tension kind of works in every single character, where every character has this sort of wound, which is very clear on Frankie and very clear on the tortoise. Um, it tells us this world is a charming and beautiful one, but there's also this sadness and this terror underlying. So, um, yeah, that's how it directly influenced the design and the look of things. This beauty and this terror. But it comes to the performances as well. So, and like animation. So when you're working in animation, oftentimes you'll have a scene that an animator will send you. It's like 1 second long. It's 24 frames. It's in the middle of a scene, in the middle of the film, and they say, "Is this good? Can we mark this off and continue to the next one?" And you're like, "How the hell am I supposed to know if the movie is spaghetti at this point? How do I say yes?" But you ask yourself in a smaller way, what is this 24 frame shot about? What is it trying to say? What are we trying to communicate? And what is the emotion? And if I can keep coming back to those core things, it guides me through every tiny decision I have to make.
Interesting. What inspires you as an animator, or even from the comic book world? I'm curious what artists and what films and what comic books
Mm.
maybe inspire you.
For this movie, most of my inspiration comes from live action film. And even now, as I'm trying to kind of pivot a bit to do some live action, um, yeah, I realize that live action it tends to be the main source of inspiration. For
So,
this one specifically, oh, sorry.
no, I was going to say, so how does live action inspire you as an animator?
I think because of, well, for one, I'm not an animator. I'm pre-production, so I'm like storyboard, I'm story, I'm composition, but then the actual movement of the characters, that's always handled by animators who are the professionals.
Right.
So I want to give them their due because they're all incredible, and I don't do any animation really. Um, but the kinds of films that inspire me are ones that have this mythic quality that you kind of like nailed right at the outset there. Ones that take you on a journey. They're not easy watching. They kind of make you feel things. They make you feel loss. They take you kind of through hell and back, and they scare you a little bit. And these movies I'm specifically talking about are like The Never-Ending Story,
Oh, great
The
movie.
Last Unicorn, um, and probably to me like the paragon of great family cinema from the 80s, which is Return to Oz. Have you ever seen that film?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that one was on the rotation constantly, and it was so scary, but so involving. And I was just so enraptured with that movie that when it came time to make a family film, and I was given that opportunity, and I asked myself, what kind of experience do I want to create? I went right back to that film, and I was like, I want to scare kids.
Well, as
I do.
kids, we like to be scared. I mean, honestly,
Exactly.
maybe not too
Exactly.
much. Maybe some like it a little more than others. But yeah, I mean, as a kid watching films, you want that tension. You want to kind of watch the movie from under the blankets. So I get that.
Yeah, and because those are the ones that stick, right? The ones that keep coming back to.
Right, right, right. I was going to ask you, and you already alluded to it. So you are now wanting to do some live action work. Are you wanting to stay in the family kind of genre? Are you what kind of stories are you looking to tell?
My favorite genre is horror. And so every time I'm kind of given the opportunity to write something or dive into something, horror tends to be the place I go to. But what's been happening over the last few years is I've been doing these 48-hour short films with a small crew of mine and submitting them to festivals. And the last couple of years, we've managed to win jury awards and audience awards. Um, but these films, like, you never know what the prompt or the genre is going to be until you get it the
Right,
day you start.
right.
And so these films have been like comedy, they've been romantic comedy, they've been like biopic kind of satires, and these are realms I would never play in. But we've been able to stretch our storytelling muscles and try new things, and the audience is really enjoying it. So as much as I want to just do horror, I'm kind of open now to like what else can we do and still, really connect with people.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, before we wrap up, tell the audience how they can follow your career and see what you're up to next. Are you like an Instagram
Absolutely.
person? Are you social media person? How does the audience track you down?
Of all of the many hats I've had to wear working on this production, because it's a small one, the hardest is probably social media. Um, however, I do have a website, nickjohnson.ca, when I try to keep things updated there. And on Instagram is probably the one I'm on the most. And so you can catch me there at Illustrated Nick, or you can keep track with Sunburnt Unicorn at Sunburnt Unicorn Film.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Nick, it's a terrific film. I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of
Thank you
animation.
so much.
And
Appreciate that.
we need to wrap up, but don't hang up. I want to chat with you just for a bit before I let you go. But congratulations on the film and keep us posted on what you're working on next.
Thank you very much. I absolutely will.
All right, take care.
This episode is sponsored by Gemini Crown Tech, owned and operated by Stephanie Moore and Stephanie Harrison. We at Gemini Crown Tech have covered all your production management needs with our proprietary software. Please visit our website at www.geminicrowntech.com and use the code FMP for Filmmaker Mixer Podcast listeners, so we know how you heard about us.
Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, a podcast created and hosted by filmmakers Jeff Stolen and Andrew Lamping, and produced by Melody Lopez.
Our theme song was composed by Stephen D. Bennett.
Make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for future episodes.